Our featured speaker is a nationally recognized financial educator, an author, a speaker, a Silicon Valley millionaire who created companies known and listed on the NASDAQ stock exchange. He's also the designer of the AH-64 Apache attack helicopter designed for the U.S. Army Cavalry. Please welcome Gary Sipos.
Thank you, Clint. That was awesome. Well, it truly is an honor to be here at West Point Military Academy, where the greatest names in the history of the United States and even the world have spoken, at this stage and at this institution, have walked these grounds. General George Washington, Thomas Jefferson was a co-founder of West Point. It's just amazing that I'm here. And the reason why I say it's amazing I'm here, well, it's amazing also to share the stage with Buzz Aldrin and General Honore. It's unbelievable. And one of the main reasons why I say that is because I've had an amazing life. And I'm hoping to finish even stronger. But I will say that I sort of started out at a bit of a disadvantage. And that was, does anybody here know any homeless people? Raise your hand. Yeah, a few? Okay, good. Yeah, quite a few. Well, I was one of them, so now you can all raise your hands. And that's where I started out. So they asked me to come here and talk about leadership, and so I thought I would, share 3 stories from my life. And so one starts, hoorah! Yeah, sorry, I have to change my mind state. All right, let's go. One starts when I was young, and actually, my dad and I were living in a car. Okay, come on, baby. All right, we're there. My dad and I were living in a car, and it's the middle of the night, and all of a sudden, boom, big explosion, and it was the glass breaking, and there was a guy with his head in our car, and my dad yells, "Banjo, banjo!" And banjo, what that was is a stick, and so why did my dad call a stick a banjo? But he hands me a stick, and there's a guy with his head inside our car, and he's he had a rock, and he was hepped up on PCP, and he's grabbing at our stuff, and so of course when you're in close quarters combat, what you do is you start screaming, right? Because to let the enemy know that you're nuts, and hopefully they go away. But so I'm like, and my dad grabs, holds me the stick, and I'm hitting the guy. I hate to say this, target him right in the face, and bam, bam, and my dad screaming, yeah, and the car shaking and everything else. It was quite a scene. And so finally, after an eternity, the guy leaves. But my dad's still screaming. He's like, and so finally I turn to my dad, and I'm like, Dad, the guy's gone. It's okay, it's okay. And he's like, no, every time you hit the guy in the face, he came back and you hit me. And he's like, ow, ah. And so, anyway, so that's the first story. All right, second story. And this is only like 3 or 4 years later. I'm at Hughes Helicopters, and I'm designing, I have to tell a military story, and I'm designing the AH-64 Apache helicopter. And it was amazing. So I'm in charge of doing the target acquisition and designation sight, which is the laser that pushes out the front of the helicopter. And it also has night vision, and it can see through sandstorms, and amazing piece of equipment. And so we're at the bunker, and we're at the test range, and we light up the laser, and we have a Hellfire with no warhead on it, but a dummy load on a rack, and we're in the bunker, and we shoot it off, first test. Yeah, and so it takes off, and it's, when we see it wiggling around, all of a sudden, whack, it locks on the laser, going right towards the target. And we're pretty excited, engineers, us nerd heads. And so we were like, yeah, it's on target. And all of a sudden, and then after a couple milliseconds or so, starts to shake, and we're like, and then it goes boom, and it nosedives right in the dirt, gets about halfway there, and big dust cloud, and we're in the bunker, and it's total silence. And then all of a sudden, I say, well, at least we got halfway there. And so there was a lieutenant colonel over on the side there, didn't like my comment. He comes over, and he's like, what do you mean? And he said a few words that I probably won't repeat on the stage, but it's something about $40 billion, and halfway there, isn't quite the Army way, and a few other choice words. So anyways, we went back, and what we found out was the exhaust from the Hellfire missile, dispersed my laser, and so we changed the chemistry of the projectile, the propellant, I should say, and also changed frequency of the laser, and all was good on the next test. And at the next test, I was standing there, and we went all the way to the target, and I did not say a word because that lieutenant colonel was right next to me. Yeah, I didn't say a word. Yeah. So anyways, so that's the second story. All right, the last story is I've had the privilege of taking companies to the NASDAQ and whatever, just doing some amazing things, only in America. And so what I do now is I help people, and I help people live their life in dignity and live their life, without dependent on the government. So I help them out financially in the sense of I show them how to be independent. And so, for example, there's a lot of financial people, and a lot of them are focused on rate of return. So they say, how much are you making? You're making 6%? Well, come on over to me and I'll get you 7%. And that's okay. That can be helpful. But really, what's really helpful is I went back to my professors and said, please help me out here. And how does this work? How does money work? And essentially, they said financial processes is the target. And so what I do is I help them, like, for example, if you have a bunch of money in an IRA or 401k, which most people do, and you've seen that commercial with the guy walking around with the big number, I met my number, and actually, unfortunately, you don't have control of that. Who has control of your IRA? Who has control of your 401k? Well, unfortunately, it's Uncle Sam, because he can change tax rates to any time he wants, to any rate he wants. And believe it or not, in the history of the United States of America, 94% is the top tax rate of all time. And so what I do is I show people financial processes, like where you can roll an IRA into a Roth, but then that's a taxable event, but there's ways to do it tax-free. And there's ways to make capital gains optional. There's all these powerful financial processes, not products, but processes out there, and that's what I show people to do. So in summary, I just wanted to say, throughout my lifetime, there's a few leadership practices that I've always adhered to and has done me well, and I'll share them with you. And one is focus on the goal. So, focus on, well, I'll just say the second part. And the second one is be aware of unintended consequences. So, like if you're, striking somebody, watch out for your poor dad. If you're shooting a Hellfire missile, make sure the exhaust doesn't disperse your laser. And also, if you get your number, make sure that that is your number. It doesn't fall off. And the last thing is, doesn't matter where you come from, it matters where you're going. God bless America. Yes, sir.
All
Thank you so
right.
much.
Take it in.
Wow, look at that.
Great job.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir.